Hey guys, thanks for joining me here for another session on the TD Fitness channel, I'll call it, whether you're watching on Facebook Live or on YouTube or listening to the podcast on iTunes or Google Play. I appreciate you guys joining me here again today. I'm Coach T from TD Fitness, and before I do anything else today, I have to congratulate a couple of groups of people. First, we just finished up the Think About Your Drink challenge. That was a free 2-week challenge that we ran, and it ended last Friday. And I want to say that everyone who participated in that finished that challenge with over 60%, I'll call it compliance or adherence to the habit. That means that over 2/3 of the time, we all met the goal of opting for either water, coffee, or tea over sugary drinks and substitutes. You know, I always say that it's not about perfection all the time, but rather consistency over time. And I think this is the perfect example of incorporating healthy habits while still living your life. So I am very proud of these folks. Everyone who participated in that challenge, way to go, guys. Great job. Secondly, I have to congratulate all those who took the plunge with me this year and completed the half Ironman race in North Carolina this past weekend. At the time of this recording, it's currently October 2017. And I will tell you that the majority of us who participated in that race set a personal record. And a special shout out to my buddy Kevin, who bested his previous time by about 40 minutes. That's 40 minutes. That's amazing. And the completion of this event, particularly at this particular time, and the accomplishments of the many participants in that race is really the perfect backdrop to today's topic. So today, I want to talk about getting from your current state in your health and fitness journey to where you want to be, to meeting your goals. And I'm going to use my example from this past weekend, the half Ironman race that we all completed. And I'll go back to a conversation with the receptionist when I checked in at the hotel this weekend. You know, there were several athletes there, many of them, just about all of them, participating in that race or volunteering in some form or there to support others. And she obviously noticed that I was there to participate in the race, and we were talking, and she made a comment. She said, "Man, I could never do that," meaning she could never complete a 70.3 mile half Ironman event. And this single statement echoed what I have heard so many others say before, not just with Ironman racing, but I've heard it when discussing weight loss, when talking about weight loss, when it comes to healthy eating, when it comes to finding time for exercise, because so many of us view healthy living as a job or this huge, daunting, unreachable goal or huge task. And it's so daunting to many of us. So I want to provide another way to look at it. And once you understand this other way of looking at it, healthy living doesn't seem so difficult or so daunting at all. So that's the takeaway from this episode, that if you think healthy living is difficult, you can absolutely have a different perspective and a different outlook on healthy living. And I'm going to show you how. But going back to this young lady's statement, she said, "I could never do that." It also sounded eerily familiar to what I said just a few years ago about completing my first triathlon, even short distance triathlon. I mean, I couldn't swim more than the length of the pool without being exhausted and having to stop for a breather. I'd never run more than 8 miles in my life. And I know that to some of you, that may sound like a good distance, but I hadn't even come close to that distance in the 10 years prior to me getting back into triathlon in 2010, 2011. I'd never ridden my bike for more than an hour. So I was really at the very beginning stages, not even really thinking about completing a long distance triathlon. So what changed? I mean, what changed between 2010 when I decided to give my first short triathlon a try and 2015, when I was fortunate and blessed enough to complete a full Ironman, 140.6 mile race that consisted of about a 2.5 mile swim in open water, 112 miles on the bike, and a full marathon, 26.2 miles to round it off? The answers I'll give you here. And they're the same steps required for your positive, healthy lifestyle change, your goal to lose weight, your goal to improve your eating habits, your goal to find time to exercise, because every single one of us has our own Ironman to conquer, right? Whether it's in the form of completing a mile walk or running your first 5K race or trying to fit in 3 exercise sessions a week or even adding more veggies to your diet. The end goal can be just as challenging depending on where you are right now and what you've gone through in the past. And I get that. So what changed? Well, the first thing was that someone told me I could do it. And that sounds kind of funny, but I'll take you back to 2010. I had lost my father a few years prior in 2007. And I had this idea in 2010 that I wanted to commemorate him by doing a race. And I found a short triathlon, actually an international distance triathlon. It was Olympic distance, Olympic international distance. And it was taking place on September 11th, 2011. And my father's birthday was on September 11th. So I felt it was fitting to try to complete this event, but I was scared. Like I said, I hadn't done anything like this before. So I mentioned it to my wife to get her thoughts. And she asked how long the race was. And I told her, it was, I described the event to her. I told her it was just under a mile swim, about 20 or so odd miles on the bike, and then a 10K run. And she said, okay, so what are you thinking? What's the problem? Well, I told her I didn't know if I could do it. And she looked at me, and this was in 2010, remember? She looked at me and said, you have a year. And those simple words were so powerful because she meant I had a year to train for this event. And I was already trying to talk myself out of it by saying that I wasn't sure that I could do it. I had never done those distances before. But like I said, those words were very powerful to me. And I started thinking about the concept that I was familiar with at the time, but really didn't get formally educated on this concept until a couple of years later when I became a health coach. And that concept is this: every crazy, insane, seemingly unreachable goal is comprised of smaller goals, smaller milestones and benchmarks that you can absolutely accomplish. So even if there's doubt in reaching your end goal, you should be confident that you can reach your incremental goals leading up to that goal. And that statement from my wife sparked a belief that I could actually meet this goal. In fact, as I think about it, I remember watching her complete her first half marathon well before I got into any of the distance racing events. And I remember thinking as I watched her cross the finish line that, man, that was so motivating. She was such a motivator to me. Everyone who ran that race was really motivating to me. So I saw her do something that made me believe I could do it as well. And she told me I can do it. So in case you missed it, in the numerous blog posts, the podcasts that I put out, the Facebook Live sessions, the tweets, what I'm trying to do is I want to be at least one person who tells you that you can, just like my wife told me that I can, because I know that you can. So that's the first thing that changed. What was the second thing that changed? Well, I got into the habit of improving. How did I do that? I did it the exact same way you do it, by making small, gradual, incremental changes to what I was currently doing. And those small changes didn't require much effort. That's the point. Effort is a finite resource. So when you talk about putting forth effort to change your behavior, you should really think about making things effortless, because that's where habits come in. It's easy for me to continue to do something that doesn't require much more effort on my part. That's the reason for small incremental change, because those changes you're able to stick with, and there's a better chance that you're going to maintain them over time. That's the whole concept behind what I'm talking about with lifestyle change. We're not talking about holistic, sweeping changes right off the bat. You make little changes, one by one, little by little, and those habits will stick. So I started gradually going farther than I had gone before. I started stretching myself. I started learning something new, learning more about my body and learning more about my limits. And what I found was what most people find when they start to stretch themselves in this manner. And that was that you can accomplish way more than you ever thought possible. I didn't actually discover my limits, but rather I discovered that I could do more, that I could go farther. And it was only because I tried to. And the same is true for you. See, the hard part isn't in crossing the finish line. The hard part is actually in taking the first step out of the starting blocks. Once you start moving, you will cross the finish line, but you just have to start moving. So again, thinking back to that period, I didn't know how to swim. Like I said, I could barely swim the length of the pool. But I looked for a swim clinic, and I found a couple of places locally that taught you how to swim. And they both mentioned this TI method. That's TI method. It stands for total immersion. So me being the cheapskate that I am, I went to the TI method webpage and found that I could actually buy a $19 DVD with 10 lessons on it versus paying a couple of $100 to somebody to try to teach me the same thing. So that's the route I went. No kidding. So I bought that DVD. It consisted of 10 lessons. And what I would do I would practice that lesson early morning before going to the pool. And then I would watch the lesson early morning before going to the pool. And then I would practice it at the pool. And I will tell you that over the course of about a month, I went from swimming, I call it swimming. I wasn't even swimming in the beginning. I was barely making it through the water. But I went from that to actually swimming 250 to 300 meters nonstop within a month. That's 10 times farther than I could do when I started. And I just continued to improve. And I found out that swimming in particular is unlike anything else that I had done before, because at least swimming for distance is, because you think about most things that require physical effort, they require more power, more force to perform better. So if you want to jump higher, you should build your muscles so that you can indeed jump higher. You want to run faster, same thing. You want to bike faster, same thing. But swimming is different. Swimming for distance is not about creating force, but it's about reducing drag. So that was the switch that flipped in my mind. And I found that, if you could swim 50 meters, then you could actually swim 300 meters. And if you could swim 300, then why not 600? And if you could swim 600, you could continue to swim 1,000. You see where I'm getting with this? So little small incremental changes like that, things that I discovered along the way, that's what enabled me to improve in the swimming category. I started biking more, adding just a mile or two 1 week at a time. I started running longer, adding a half mile or so each week or every couple of weeks. So again, the second thing that changed was that I got into the habit of trying to improve little by little. I made those small changes to what I was doing, which is not much different than what I had accomplished the week prior. But over time, I found a huge improvement in the level I was at when I started. So the third thing that changed, those habits started leading to success. And it's important to understand here that I'm not using the term success to mean I got faster or that I lost weight. Although these things were byproducts, that's not how I'm defining success. The way I measured success was by actually completing the workouts that I had planned for each week, for each day that I trained. So I'd say, okay, today I need to ride my bike. I went and rode my bike, mission accomplished. My success was not determined by whether or not I rode faster than I did the last time I got on the bike. No, my success was determined by the fact that I accomplished that task at hand. And that's the same way I teach success in the Fit Life program. You've talked about this before. If my successes had been defined by my needing to get faster or the need to lose weight or anything else that I couldn't really control, then the results could have been a much different story. What if I hadn't gotten faster? What if I didn't drop any weight if that was my goal? So many other things go into those types of goals that it can literally be beyond your control on whether or not you meet those goals. And failure to meet a goal like that is one of the worst things that can happen when you're trying to implement positive change in your life, because it demotivates you and it makes you ask yourself, why am I even here? You see, successes, if you define them correctly, they can start to break down your previous beliefs. The belief that I can't do a triathlon is now gone. The belief that I don't have time to train is now gone. The belief that I can't learn to swim is now gone. And the belief that my knee pain would prevent me from running for any amount of distance is now gone. Success for me was defined by meeting my goal of completing a workout, not in the results of that workout. Certainly there are times when your goal should be the result of a workout. And I'm thinking of occasions where you're training for performance. If you think about high-end athletes, professional NBA, baseball, football players, Olympic athletes, even collegiate athletes, any type of athlete. But what I'm talking about here is lifestyle change and being able to implement positive changes over the course of time, positive, healthy habits. It's not about performance. It's about adherence. It's about completing the task at hand. So my success was defined by something that I can control, and that was me getting up to complete that workout. It wasn't defined by something I couldn't control, which was my performance, whether or not I got faster or whether or not I lost weight. Just like your goals should be to accomplish something that you can absolutely control, not something you can't control, such as the amount of weight you want to lose. And another important point here, successes in one area of your life can carry over into other areas of your life. But here's the catch. If you let them. The confidence I have after completing an Ironman it's unbelievable, right? And that confidence carries over into so many other things. My wife made a comment just this past weekend. She said, high achievers achieve high in all areas of life. And she was referring to one of our friends. He's a doctor. He's a great husband and father, very fit individual, and just a great Christian role model. And what came to mind was this concept of limiting beliefs. There's a book called The Secret. I think there may also be a movie on that. I haven't read the book or seen the book, but as I understand, this was one of the concepts that was presented in that book, this concept of limiting beliefs. And it goes like this. Whatever you believe to be true for you is true in your mind. So whatever you believe to be true is true for you. They're not set in stone, and the science says that you can actually reprogram those limiting beliefs and turn them into positive behaviors, positive beliefs. And by doing so, you can release any mental blocks that stand between you and your goals. We all have beliefs about weight loss, about fitness, about healthy living, but we have to ask ourselves, are these truths? They may seem to be truths in our mind, but many times they're not. But they can be to us. That's how powerful they are. So I ask you, if these are beliefs and not necessarily truths, can we change them? And the answer is obviously yes. And if we change them, then they can become just as powerful in our lives, in our minds, as our previous negative beliefs. We have the power to change our beliefs, our behaviors, and our habits to get different results. I just witnessed over 2,000 people do that this weekend at the Half Ironman race. People that once said, I don't think I could ever swim, bike, and run for over 70 miles. People who made comments just like the hotel receptionist that said, I can never do that. Well, when you look at it like that, when you look at a mile swim, a 50-plus mile bike ride, and a half marathon, yeah, that seems kind of daunting. But when you take where you are now and gradually add little by little and make gradual progressions and improvements on where you are right now, then it takes on a different light. It's not so difficult. It's not so daunting. It's not so intimidating. Now, I'm not here to, believe it or not, I'm not here to convince you to do an Ironman. Although, if you are remotely interested in that, please drop me a note, because every year I work with folks to try to get them to complete their first Ironman distance or half Ironman distance race. And I've done that for 3 years in a row now. And we're 100% on completion for everybody that started that. That's just something that I'm passionate about because I like doing those events. And more than anything else, I like seeing people achieve goals that they never thought were possible. But I'm not here necessarily to convince you to do an Ironman event, an Ironman or a half Ironman. I just use that half Ironman example because it's something that initially seems impossible, but is absolutely within reach when you change your mindset and train purposefully. So let me give you another example, and this one may be a little bit closer to your current struggle. Let's say that I told you to complete 312 miles on your feet next year, whether it's walking or running. I mean, that seems like a pretty intimidating ask, like a pretty daunting task, right? What if I told you to complete 130 hours of exercise in 2018? That's the same thing. That seems like a lot until you look at it this way. Let's say a typical week for you looks like this: 30-minute walk on Monday, maybe a half hour of some core body weight strength training and stretching on Wednesday, and then another half hour walk on Friday. And over the weekend, let's just find 1 hour to exercise. Let's just say that's walking at some point over the weekend. So that simple example actually meets the recommended 150 minutes, 2.5 hours of moderate exercise per week. That's the recommendation put forth by the Centers for Disease Control and the American Heart Association. And it meets the recommendation to exercise on most days of the week. In this case, it's 4 times. A walk on Monday and Friday, a longer walk on the weekend, and a half hour strength core stretching session on Wednesday. For many, this is a rather modest goal, that weekly plan to walk 3 times a week and do some body weight exercises, which can actually be done at home just once a week. Here's where the beauty lies, though. For that amount of walking, even at a moderate pace, you'd accumulate 6 miles per week. That's the equivalent of 2 5K races. So for those of you who think you couldn't do a 5K, consider that. Over the course of a month, you complete 26 miles. That's the equivalent of a marathon. For those of you who have a goal of completing a marathon but don't think you can do it, think about that. Over the course of the year, you guessed it, right? 312 miles. 312 miles is more than twice the amount that I ran when training for my first 2 half Ironman races. 312 miles is a lot. That's at 2.5 hours a week, 10 hours a month. Or again, 130 hours a year. It adds up. And I have to mention that even if you weren't consistent at that, even if you only accomplished half of your planned workouts, that's still over 150 miles you would have walked over the course of a year. Who knows what ailments you would have prevented, what diseases you would have fought off, what negative moods you would have avoided just by doing a little bit of walking each week. Your beliefs are shaped by your experiences, by the way you view the world around you. If the world you see is defined by people struggling to lose weight and a struggle to be healthy, then you know what I'm talking about with the negative beliefs. And I can't even say that I blame you because it's so easy to see that in the world today. I mean, most of us as Americans are either overweight or obese. 2/3 of Americans are either overweight or obese. But the thing to understand is that the world around you does not have to define your world. If you choose to believe in healthiness, if you choose to be an overcomer, then that's your new belief. Many people thought that running a mile in under 4 minutes was impossible until Roger Bannister did it in 1954. Within 2 months, 2 other people had run a mile in under 4 minutes, and a host of other runners have accomplished this feat since then. Your reality now does not have to be your reality forever. So what I'm asking you is simple. I'm asking you just to start to change your mind, to be open to thinking about healthy living differently. Again, the hard part isn't in crossing the finish line, it's in taking the first step. So I'm going to cap this off with a couple of quotes, both by Seth Godin, who I read a lot of his work. And the first says, "It's easy to imagine that some things have to be the way they've always been, that music has to be delivered on a round platter, that an overnight stay needs to be in a hotel. That was from one of his blog posts called The Power of Community Learning. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. But I'm going to take that quote a step further and say that it's easy to imagine that the perceived difficulties associated with weight loss and healthy living have to be addressed using the same old methods that keep you in a constant cycle of work, burnout, work, burnout. And I'm talking about the starvation diets, the unsustainable menus, the endless amounts of exercise that we think we need to do in order to, quote, be healthy. It's easy to imagine that that's the way you have to approach weight loss and healthy living, but that's not reality. That's not the way to incorporate true lifestyle change. That's not what I teach, and that's not what the Fit Life program that I created is all about. Let me give you another quote by Seth Godin. This blog post was entitled, "Don't Forget the Second Step," and this is a great one. He says, "The first step is learning how to do it, finding and obtaining the insight and the tools and the techniques you need, understanding how it works. But step two is easily overlooked. Step two is turning it into a habit, committing to the practice, showing up and doing it again and again until you're good at it and until it's a part of who you are and what you do. Most education, most hardware stores, most technology purchases, most doctor visits, most textbooks are about the first step. What a shame that we don't invest just a little more to turn the work into a habit." Man, that's a great one. You know, I often refer to the Fit Life program that I created. And the reason I am so excited about that, the reason I want to talk about it, is because it was built around addressing the second step, right? It's not just about educating you. It's about helping you implement habits over the long term. So I'll talk more about that in the future. The program is going to open up for applicants next month. I'm excited to see you there. But until then, I do have a freebie for you to download for this episode. You know, I believe in the power of visual stimulation and visual motivation. So what I did this week was I created a collage of triathlete finishers. And I think you'll find that it's maybe not what you expect. There's people of all shapes, sizes, all ability levels, and disability levels. Folks that have overcome so many different obstacles, as you'll see when you download it. I really think you'll enjoy this one. So go and download that. You can make it your desktop background, print it out, hang it up, use it for motivation, or just keep it to yourself. But let it serve as a reminder that you can, that they can, that we all can accomplish the goals that we once thought were so elusive. So you can get that freebie at tdfitness.net/011 download. You'll also find the show notes for this episode at tdfitness.net/011. I'll hang all of the referenced links there, including the quotes by Seth Godin. And for those of you watching this live, again, I want to thank you so much for tuning in. The replays for this episode will be available on the show notes page, as I said, tdfitness.net/011. I'll get that up tonight after I sign off here. And I encourage you to catch it on a podcast, either on iTunes or Google Play. And again, you can rewatch the video here on Facebook or on YouTube. All of those links will be on the show notes. As always, don't forget to check us out on social media, tdfitness.net/Facebook and tdfitness.net/Twitter. Guys, again, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate all of you watching, all of you listening. Have a blessed one. Coach T, out.